the order of worship that was sent out with the Zoom invitation listed me as the guest speaker. I feel very much at home, hardly like a guest at all. I first brought a prepared message at the behest of David Bills in 1990, and have more than once since then. So I feel myself not a guest speaker, but I am, as always, pleased to be among friends and to have this role. The 7th chapter of Matthew, the 3rd and 4th verses. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me cast out the mote that is in thine eye, and lo, the beam is in thine own eye? And from Britain, Faith and Practice, Margaret Glover wrote in 1989, those of us known as activists have sometimes been hurt by the written or spoken implication that we must be spending too little time on our spiritual, contemplative lives. I do know many atheists who are active to improve the lot of humankind, but for those of us who are friends, our attendance at meeting for worship and our silent, prayerful times are what make our outer activity viable and effective, if it isn't effective. I have similarly seen quieter friends hurt by the implication that they do not care enough because they are not seen to be politically active. Some worry unnecessarily that they may be doing things of a less important nature, as if to be seen doing things by the eyes of the world is the same thing as to be seen doing things by the eyes of God. I suggest that we refrain from judging each other or belittling what each is doing, and that we should not feel belittled. We cannot know the prayers that others make or do not make in their own times of aloneness. We cannot know what letters others may be writing to governments similarly. We were all made differently in order to perform different tasks. Let us rejoice in our differences. My friend Mitch was appearing before a judge who, given the story, probably shouldn't be named, Judge McClellan. And Judge McClellan made an error, and Mitch approached the bench and suggested to him that he might have erred, that this was something he had done or said wasn't exactly as it was required to be. And the judge responded, Mitch, I am human. I make mistakes, but I don't make them often, and I'm not making one now. The Court of Appeals did not agree with his assessment, but how sure one is probably correlates some to how sure one feels. But it's not one-to-one. It's, I serve on a board that provides insurance to Quaker organizations for their employees, health insurance. And I was on a subcommittee, and there were 3 of us. And I realized in the conversation that this committee was having about how to deal with something, that, and said to the group, I said, if I had my way, we would have plenty of money and no one would be insured. And if my colleague here had her way, everyone would be insured for everything and we wouldn't possibly have enough money to pay for it. Neither way would be accomplishing the goals of, that our members needed. So we were both wrong. I've been wrong about things here. I see nods. Thank you for the encouragement. I was a very unenthusiastic supporter of building this room. We were relatively new to the meeting. We had little kids. It just didn't seem like I was wrong. This is a wonderful place that encourages and nourishes our worship and our community. And the space does matter to that process. I thought it wasn't a good time to put solar panels on the roof of the building. I thought there was life left in the roof. I didn't know anything about it, but I thought there was life left in the roof. But I wasn't going to, and that if we waited until the useful life of the roof, technology would have advanced more, and it would be a longer term, better. This wasn't crazy, but it was wrong. Some things need to be done, because now is the time that there is enthusiasm and support and energy and, yes, money for this project. And there was this wonderful moment where that was true. And during the pandemic, people would say, how's your church getting along? How's your meeting getting along? And I would point to that as an example of how during the pandemic, the community was strong enough to undertake and complete this project, which not only dealt with our meeting, but included some help for those less fortunate in their economic circumstances. It was done at the same time. I was wrong. The right thing was done. When I disagree with other people, and am at my best, so not always, I will examine my own heart. I always find objectivity. Well, often I find objectivity. And then I will examine my mind and find that I am being completely rational. And then I will recognize that my belief is completely in accord with reality. And then I am convinced that other people have not adequately examined their heart and mind and belief, because their view is not in accord with reality. You may have had this experience yourself. It's really a pretty predictable process. You disagree with somebody, and you say, if only they were more adequately informed, then they would agree with me, whereupon, in order to overcome what is called the ignorance assumption, you inform them. And lo and behold, they still don't agree with you. And you think to yourself, well, they have the information. They must not be smart enough to process it. This is called the ignorance assumption. I'm sorry, the first one was ignorance. This is idiocy. Idiocy assumption. And of course, it's not a valid assumption because we all know people who are very, very smart and nevertheless disagree with us. They manipulate information and values and stuff, and they just weigh them ultimately differently. Well, if they've got the information and they're smart enough to deal with it and they still don't agree with me, they must be evil. This is called the evil assumption. Because what else could it be? What else could it be? Now here, I learned this set of assumptions in a book, from a book, and I don't think it was original with the author, by Catherine Schultz. Catherine spelled with a K and a Y, and Schultz is spelled without a T. She should know something about her topic. It's called being wrong. And so we have a system to help guard against getting caught up in that. Again, from Britain, Faith and Practice. The danger for any spirit-inspired religion is individualism carried to excess. We believe that the truth is available to each of us. What is this individualism carried to success? What could they be talking about? In the 17th century, this was seen amongst those called ranters. Friends, too, had a risk. What preserved them was the discovery of gospel order, the setting up of meetings for church affairs where individual insights was tested against the insight of the gathered group, where individual insight was tested against the insight of the gathered group. Now, we've all used this. I've used this. I've used this clerking, and I've used it participating in the group. I have found it to be very difficult when people are representing others, when you're talking about boards and yearly meetings and that kind of, I'm not here speaking merely for myself. I'm speaking for others who are not here, who might or might not be moved in the same way I am by the insights of the gathered group. But at New Garden, we know each other. That's why people were nodding when I said I was wrong. People know each other. And we love each other. So this testing of my insight against the insight of the group should be a mechanism that is within our reach. Not all the time perfectly, but most of the time, and pretty well. Now, again from Britain, Faith and Practice, under conflict within meeting. Such conflict, well, there are times of conflict in every meeting when we are required to find and show the love we have for one another and to face our difficulties squarely. Such conflict may involve a clash of personalities, differences over the quantity or style of vocal ministry, issues about the place where meetings for worship are held. Problems may become entangled, and one sort of issue may masquerade as another. Care will be required to identify the root cause. Skill, time, and great love are needed to overcome these problems, but where they've been openly faced and successfully overcome, meetings sometimes become much richer for the experience. Among these three theories, this theory of ignorance, idiocy, and evil, the most dangerous one is the third one, the theory of evil. I submit to you for your consideration that it is that thrusting upon others base motives is the opposite of seeking that of God in others. Thrusting upon others base motives is the opposite of seeking that of God in others. I do some work that involves devising fundraising programs for friends' work in other parts of the world that involves examining whether or not we are looking at white saviorism as donor heroes to save the less fortunate masses. A consideration because it works. It raises money that actually does good things. And how to present it and moderate it in such a way, when to use it not at all, when to use it some, and how to moderate it from that notion. Now, these are not people who are advocating for one thing or another, some of whom are acting out of base motives. They may be misguided in the moment, as may we all. But whether to do what is most effective in getting the larger work done, or what is perceived as doing that, or doing it with the purity of expression that one would hope and seek for one's work. Nobody's being evil. Nobody's acting out of race or class biases. They're trying to find something that will feed and give health services and education and peace work and do lots of good things. It's very hard. It's harder even than a few years ago, Judy Harvey Bartlett did some workshop kind of stuff on Quaker process. The example she was using was whether or not we should use candles in this room, because we had this new, wonderful, beautiful room and we should care for it on the one hand, or the effect of having candles at the Christmas Eve service on the other. These are not world-shaking events, but they're right-thinking people disagree. Um, 20 years ago, there was clash here between, clash may or may not be too strong a word, between people who were very concerned that the meeting's money, God's money, be tended to in a way that would produce the most money to have resources to do good works. And other people who thought our investments should be in the purest of pure activities and should not, we shouldn't dirty our hands with the evil associated with some of what was available out there in the world to invest in. Well, neither, and interestingly, this was resolved by using Quaker process over time in a step-by-step way. But people weren't being evil. They didn't have base motives. They wanted to do the right thing for the right reasons and make the world and New Garden Friends meeting better, more effective in the world. They're friends who wanted us to be not 50 some this morning, but 150 some, and to sing out praises and joy and thanksgiving together. And there are others who want to care very whose notion in the moment, given world circumstances, of nourishing the community are keeping it safe and keeping it similarly safe for people in at different levels of risk. These people aren't being evil or selfish on either side of this question. They're people wanting to nourish this community and to protect the community and to have this community continue to do good work and God's work in this place for another 200 or 300 years. There are people who want to, whose notions in the moment of making this place welcoming to all folks include celebrating our history, knowing it is imperfect, encouraging its display, and not expecting people then or now to be without blemish. And there are others who want to, at least in some categories of the blemishes, to make them less visible and make them such that they would not be a barrier to anyone's coming here and finding a community of love and care. Neither is being evil. neither should have base motives ascribed to them by people who have undertaken to seek that of God in others. I may be wrong. Full stop. I may be wrong now. Full stop. I may be wrong for New Garden Friends meeting now. Full stop. But I need to be willing, able, and anxious to have my notions tested against the insights of the group, the gathered group, not to win. I need to learn to release the result of that process and nourish and tend the process with people I love. Because if I am nourishing and tending that process, a truth will come out that may not be that ultimate truth in my mind, but it will be the truth now for New Garden meeting now. And it needs to be done without attributing base motives to one another. It needs to be done without attributing base motives to one another. We have a lot to celebrate in this community. We have an incredible group of people who have undertaken to worship and work together to make this community, this larger community, and this world better than it otherwise might be. There are people with talents and energy and thought processes and insights that make each of us better. Let's embrace that. Let's uphold that. Let's nourish that and release the short-term result and embrace the process that makes it all possible and work. And remember what Elmer would say, Elmer Brown, were he here this morning. God is love.